It is springtime in Colorado, and we get a lot of people bringing their vans in that have exploded water systems because they didn't properly drain their water systems in the wintertime. When water freezes, it expands. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen that. Put a water bottle in the freezer or a beer, and then you come back and this beer or soda water bottle is expanded, exploded. Same thing happens inside your water system. So one thing that we like to do, we always do, is winterize your water system. It's not very hard, pretty simple. I think where you can start off is just open your valve, drain everything out, open your faucets, just let everything drain. After that, turn your water pump on, turn the hot water on, turn the cold water on, get everything kind of flooded out. Once you drain all the water out of your system, it's smart to get a gallon. I would recommend 2 gallons of RV coolant. It isn't something that you're gonna wanna drink, but it's safe for your water system. So we'll put 1 gallon to 2 gallons into the water tank, and then you're gonna turn on your water pump. You're gonna turn on all your water fixtures. Say you're gonna turn on your shower, you're gonna turn on your sink, your external shower, until the fluid coming out is pink. Once it's pink, you're good to go. And then at that point, you can shut your water pump off and you can drain everything back out. And at that point, you're good to go. If you have a water heater, drain it. If you have like an incinerator type, just take it out. Whatever you do, just remember ice will do so much damage to your water system if you don't properly drain it out. Make sure you do it if you live somewhere where it gets really cold. So this is our 20-gallon water system in our rack and roll build. If you buy all this stuff yourself, you're looking at $500 or less. The tank isn't too much, the water pump isn't too bad, and all of these little fittings, they're not too bad either. So we use PEX for all of our water lines or steel braided lines, something that we can easily screw on or off that have rubber seals, so it's easy to replace if something gets damaged. And overall, you know, things are just nice, neat, and clean. We really like the braided stuff, and we really like the PEX. For the clamps, we just use, you know, your standard PEX type clamp, where you use a special pair of PEX pliers. You do need to have these pliers to make this stuff work, and you just basically crimp all of these little fittings right onto your PEX lines, and it's super simple. It's bombproof. You're not gonna find any leaks or anything like that. And it doesn't require a ton of skill to learn how to do this. Give you a little bit of a rundown of what we're installing right here. So on this side, we have our vent. Now, you do need a vent. If you don't install a vent and you start filling up your water tank, all of this air needs to go somewhere, and it'll expand your tank. You could possibly rupture your tank. You can blow lines. So you need to have a vent for filling and for draining. So as you drain, your water fills down, and then air is sucked from the outside, and then fills this area up. So that way, as you drain or fill, your tank isn't expanding and contracting. You're not stressing the system out. We also use this as like a fill indication. So we will attach the hose on the outside and fill the water system until it drains out of the fill, turn the water off, and then you're ready to go. You have your fill side right here. So from the outside, water travels through here and fills up your tank. You do need to have a drain. You need to be able to remove the water from your system if you have something in there for winterizing, or maybe you got a bad batch of water, but you need to have some kind of drain, a method to take the water out quickly. We just use a simple ball valve, and it's PEX on either end. This is closed, and then this is open, and then it flows straight out, and then we punch 2 holes right here. So this is right behind the passenger side wheel well, and then that stuff will leak directly onto the ground, or it'll vent from underneath the van. Now we're gonna have our pump side. Now, seems like common sense, but you always want your pump to be on the low side, because if you put your pump up here, I mean, you're not gonna be able to pull much water out of the tank before your pump's running dry. So we use just a C-flow. I really like these pumps. We haven't had any problems with these things. They're quiet, they're affordable, and they're very, very reliable. Make sure you get a screen installed, because you never know, man. When you start assembling this whole water system, maybe you're getting plastic inside your water tank, and you don't want to send that stuff through your pump. You don't want to get it caught in your water lines or in your faucet, anything like that. So make sure you have some kind of strainer. It's a pretty simple little system. One thing I will say is switch your pump. You don't want your pump to just be on all the time, because say maybe it's a really cold night, something freezes, and as it thaws, that pump is gonna kick on as soon as that water is thawed out. And maybe there's a crack in your line, it's just gonna pump all this water into your van. So I like to put a switch. Make sure the switch can handle the amperage that this water pump puts out. And you can find a lot of this stuff on the outside. It says max 8 amps. So make sure you have a switch that can handle 8 amps. And if you don't, make sure you use a relay, some kind of relay. You look up on YouTube, we'll attach a diagram, but we'll show you this is a 30 amp relay. And that way we can use a very, very small switch or a light gauge switch to control the water pump. We'll attach a diagram, and we'll go a little bit more in detail on that later, but this is the basic anatomy of the system. Everything sits a little bit lower, so you can drain everything out fairly easily. This is our water to our sink, and you can shut it off, you can kick it back on. This is shark bite for this section, so you can pop it off, you can drain it. These are quick connects, so after you've winterized, I like to go a little bit further and crack all these lines open, so that way, you know, you're not gonna have water just trapped inside your system. Everything is easily removable, and we like to build our water system this way so it's easy to winterize and it's easy to assemble. Just keep in mind, do everything before you install your cabinet. Run all your electrical wires. Maybe you have a light back here or something like that. We have a little tank gauge, and we have an electronic gauge that we hook right up to this, and it runs to our servo, and the servo runs to a little touch screen that we have on the side of our van, so you can see your water level, you know how much water you have left, and overall it just feels higher tech, and it's, you know, a little less work. You don't have to, you know, shake your van around, hold a flashlight up to your tank to see how much water you have left. So it's nice to have a water tank gauge. Also, don't forget to run water or power to your water pump. I like to keep the pump next to the tank. It's a lot easier for the pump to work to pull a little bit of air and then kick on, rather than if your pump is underneath your sink and it's got to yank a bunch of air to try and, you know, pull water out of this tank. So the entire system can be assembled before a cabinet slides over the top, and it's so much easier to build your water system like this rather than building a box, installing it, then dropping a tank into the box. You will thank me for building your water tank like this, I promise. If you do anything, you take anything from this course, do the water tank this way. So one thing we like to use also is just like pipe dope. If you have a fitting going into the plastic, and it's like a pipe thread, or it's some kind of fitting that doesn't have any sealant, make sure you use some kind of thread sealant. And another thing, if you build your water tank like this, get everything tied up, fill it up, and pressure check it. Make sure there's no leaks before you get your cabinet on. There's nothing worse than building and finishing your van, filling it up for the first time, and then it leaks, and you gotta take everything back apart. So for mounting, we have a big bracket right here that just mounts to the side of the van to prevent the water tank from sliding back. The cabinet that we slide over the front will lock it in place from sliding forward. And then we just have these guys right here, these aluminum strips, but for the most part, the cabinet is pretty tight to this entire thing, and the cabinet holds it in place. So make sure it's nice and secure. Whichever way you do it, just make sure it's nice and strapped down to the van. These are some of the fittings that you're gonna be using. We use all 1/2-inch PEX, and you can use brass fittings, you can use plastic fittings. I really like the brass stuff. I just feel like it's a little bit stronger. But you really just need some elbows and some T's. And one thing that really helps as well, you're also gonna need some kind of ball valve for your drain. So make sure you don't forget that guy. One thing that will make your life easier when it comes to assembling all this thing is draw it out. Build a little schematic, like get an idea of where it's gonna be placed, what the footprint is, and then trace everything out. And then that way you can go, oh, I need an elbow here, I need a T here, I need a splice here, whatever that may be. Prevent yourself from running back and forth to Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards 100 times during your van build. If you just take the time and then think the process through, it'll save you a ton of time. And you know, time is money. You have limited time, maybe you're doing the van build after work. You know, play it smart. Take your time to plan this correctly. And I promise you, it'll be a lot, you know, it'll be a lot less painful getting through this van build. In this little section, we're gonna talk about the tooling required to install PEX. It does require a little bit of specialty tooling, but not much. I would say the biggest and most important tool is the crimping tool. What's really great about this is it's a 2-in-1. You can crimp all your clamps, and then you can swap this guy over, and then you can break your clamps off. If you've never done PEX before, chances are you're gonna be removing some of these clamps. So get something to remove the clamps as well. Another important tool would be just the cutter as well. And I think between the crimp tool and the crimp/removal tool and this cutter, you can pretty much get away with, you know, that's really all the tooling you need. But an actual PEX cutter is super nice. You can use a razor if you want. It's just a little bit more difficult, but these things are super cheap. And the nice thing about these is it makes a very square and straight cut, which is important because you want this piece to fit nice and square and evenly all the way up to the collar of this guy. And if your cuts are all crazy and angled, the chances of getting a leak, you know, they really go through the roof. So use the right tools for this. It's not much, but you'll be happy that you did. And this kind of stuff, it doesn't leak, which is really, 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 really nice. There are other removal tools like this guy. You slide your little end in and then you just twist it and you break the clamp off. And then you have this little removal tool. So I'll show you guys how to remove one of these guys once you've clamped it on, because who knows, maybe you just had, you know, something you didn't measure out quite right, but it'll start to latch on. You want a little bit of a gap, 1/8 inch or so, and you'll squeeze it all the way. And then once you've squeezed it all the way, it'll just open up by itself. And now you can see a nice, tight, solid little clamp. You can see that it is just, you know, it's really pressed on there. The fitting is hard to spin around, it's hard to move. The end of the fitting is right there, and the end of your line is right there. So you have, you know, it's a nice spacing, and this thing is not gonna leak. But what if it does, or if it's the wrong size and you need to replace this? You would simply take this tool, either slide it in and then give it a twist and break this guy off. So you gotta remove this guy, and a lot of the times this fitting, this piece of PEX will be stuck to that fitting. So I'll just go through, snip that guy off, and then you can use this little expansion tool to just kind of pinch around in circles, expanding this thing out, so that way you can get your fitting back. So there are a couple little tools you can go ahead and muscle this thing off, but there are things that will make your life easier. So I like to get all of my little ring clamps on everything and have everything kind of assembled and put together. So that way, you know, you don't want to just like start stabbing pieces together and then clamping as you go around. It's easy to take everything apart right now. Like if I need to, you know, that's not quite the right length, being able to pop that stuff out, you know, it makes life a lot easier. So get it all assembled. It will stick together without any clamps. And then from this point, you're like, yep, this is definitely what I want. Then you can start crimping and clamping everything away. So, and again, you want about an 1/8 inch gap or so from away from your fitting. So what's nice about these pliers is they'll tell you when you've squeezed hard enough. Like as you crimp, it's kind of ratcheting along, you'll let go. Once you get to a certain point, it'll open back up. That's when you know you're ready to go. Get a pinch on this guy. I like to get it about right there. So now we're ready to crimp this thing down. Squeeze it, and you can see this thing is ratcheted into place. But as I squeeze, now it'll stop and it'll just open up by itself. It's automatically, you know, calibrated for the clamp strength required to make sure your PEX is not gonna leak. So that's why these pliers are really, really cool. And that's really all there is to it. So again, if you take anything away from this, just make sure you set everything up, draw a diagram, and then have everything set up before you start putting these clamps all together. Because once these clamps are together, it's just a little more difficult. You don't want to have to break all these things apart. Make your life easy. So just constantly think, how do I make my life easier as you build your van? And stuff like having a water system that you build before installing your cabinet, that's a big one. So this is a little crash course in our PEX system. I hope that gave you enough information to tackle this project on your own. We are going to touch up on our 5-in-5 system, which is a very, very basic water system, if this is too much for you or anything like that. So we will tackle that in our demo van a little further on down the line. But in the meantime, keep building, have fun, and we'll talk to you soon.